Well, I'm amazed that Parramatta have taken him back. For Jared, I think it's just a miracle.
It's kind of like, in The Lion King when Simba comes back, and that's great for everyone. But in this case, it's more like Scar coming back.
Yeah,
it's like
right.
a fucked up Hamlet. Cameron Smith should be made to wear, a really heavy headgear, just to bring him back to the field.
You were in a room with 2 rugby league players, and the room was secured from the outside by locks and bolts. And
So we're at Jared Haynes' place. Yep. Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of the Voluntary Tackle.
Welcome back.
The only NRL podcast David Warner hasn't pretended to cry for. But before we do anything, I need to introduce my partner in crime. The only man in Australia who has the balls to admit he enjoys watching the Commonwealth Games. Chip Jones.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I watched one of them. There was the women's butterfly. I happened to walk past a TV and it was on.
You don't have to say that.
We got first, second and third.
And just some random Welsh person fourth.
Yeah, who cares?
Doesn't really matter,
It's
does it?
fucking boring. I mean, the football's on. Give me a break.
I know. But the Commonwealth Games, mate, apparently 1.2 billion people are watching. I think it's just the same person.
I think
Multiple
they put
TV
it in.
sets.
I think it's actually on in each prison cell.
What's your favourite event?
The adverts.
I quite like those.
Really look forward to those.
My favourite event's the synchronised weightlifting. I don't know if you've ever seen that before.
Is that where both joints pop at the same time?
No, it's a little bit different. That's a different sport. That's the luge. But no, this is where all the weightlifters at the same time go to the same steroid dealer. And juice up all at once. It is. Now, we should explain to our listeners, Chip, look, we've been gone for 9 days, and we've had a lot of people asking for us.
Where were you?
I myself was hanging out with the Parramatta Eels. Where have you been, mate?
Well, I actually won some money. I won $1.2 million.
How'd you do that?
Scratchy.
Just a scratchy, one of those scratchy tickets?
Yeah, just won all this money.
Okay, that's
It's gone now.
already.
Yeah.
How'd you burn all that already?
Well, I spent the first $1 million on whores and drugs, and the rest I kind of just wasted.
And how have you been finding the games?
Oh, look, they're starting to heat up a bit now, aren't they? We're different teams are starting to really shape up for a season. I've enjoyed watching Craig Bellamy not win.
It's a rarity for him, isn't it?
That's been great. I think he'll probably retire.
I think he will. In fact, something we'll probably get into during the show. But, he's one of those guys that's not all that used to losing. Although we'll see how they go. We're recording this, we should say, on a Saturday, just prior to the doubleheader over in New Zealand. Melbourne is set to take on the Tigers again. Very strange draw.
Yeah, that is
Chip.
weird.
They just played.
Yep, that's right.
They played 3 weeks ago. Why are
Yeah,
they playing
I
again?
don't think Bellamy liked the result. I think he just petitioned. He said, look, give us another crack at it or I'm retiring.
Yep.
And so they've said, okay, we'll give you another crack if you promise to retire. So,
That's good. Because the NRL do tend to give in to his demands, don't they?
yeah, I think they've just had enough of being bent over that barrel.
But, I mean, it has been some very good footy. Last night, we had the Roosters miraculously bounce back against the Sharks. I got to say, tipping at the moment, you might as well just throw
Have a few days
dartball
off.
at the wall. I mean, it's
just have a week off. If
how
you're
does
tipping,
anyone do it?
Basically,
It
have
just-
have 9 days off.
You might as
Take
well.
our example.
Just do what we did.
Yeah.
Just have 9 days off
Yeah.
and just go have some beers.
I had a great 9 days.
That was good fun. Not that we missed this, Chip, obviously. We missed the podcast.
Yeah. Well, that's
But
true.
we had a good time while we weren't doing the podcast.
We have a good time doing we just have a good time.
Just generally.
Period.
Yep. But yeah, so we should probably talk about last night's games just very briefly before we crack on with some
Well, I
predictions
thought
for
the
this
Roosters
week.
game was good. They seem to be playing a week on, a week off at the moment. They show up for a game, they disappear for a game. They show up for a game. So
Unless you're Jared Hargraves, in which you're still on vacation.
yeah, I think they just bring him back for that other game.
Yeah, they might bring him back sort of, I don't know, during the origin period.
To level it off. I wonder whether Nick's got some kind of betting syndicate involved because he doesn't want to eat every week. It'll shorten the odds too much. But
Well, we shouldn't probably insinuate anyone's doing anything criminal because, Nick's a powerful man.
yeah, I've been a Roosters fan for long enough. I think he's
You're
sweet.
exempt.
I think he's all right.
But it was a weird one, Chippy. The Roosters forward pack, as we've talked about, they've been highly criticised this year, I should say. But last game, they really lifted, especially in that second half.
They had it over the Sharks pack, that's for sure. Which, yeah, it was interesting. I thought Napa had a pretty good game.
Tikiaho, it was very strong.
Tikiaho was great. And Corden is actually really hitting some line.
He needed to, because he's had a very flat start to the year. And it was like watching his year start up in that game, because he started out in that game the way he does normally, which was pretty flat. And then he really worked in.
Yeah, it was kind of the opposite of Moylan, really.
Moylan,
he just...
He takes too many balls.
In the end, I think he just, if he's not going to score and there's not a try and he's just going to drop it.
He must drop it. I mean, I think he's a talented player, Moylan, but he just must drop a ball cold at least 2 to 3 times a game. You just can't afford to have a guy in the team that does that.
How do you think the other Sharks players go at training when they've put on a play and 1 in every 3 times he's just going to drop it cold? Like, that's got to sap your confidence a bit going into a game, doesn't it?
Over time, you're going to be angry with him. Like, you probably do one of those hazing rituals after a while where you give him one of those steel, what do they call it, steel wool showers.
Well, maybe we could throw that out to our loyal listeners. What particular form of punishment would you like to see for Matt Moylan? And particularly if you're a Sharks fan, love to hear from you on that.
Absolutely. The other game last night, Chip, was the Dragons taking on the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Dragons still undefeated after this game, but they were given a fright as Souths made a late charge and only really just hung on. Any highlights out of that game for you?
Well, it ended up a 4-point game, if I'm not wrong. I think it was 16-12. Souths could have won that game. That's true. By the end there, they had the ball. I think they dropped the ball in the last 10 minutes or 6 minutes attacking the line. Could have won the game, something like
Cody
that.
Walker decked one right at the end there.
So, it's encouraging for Souths, and particularly because, St George are undefeated. I'm curious to see, who you think is going to knock them off. Who's going to beat the Dragons for the first time this year?
Look, I've got to tell you, they're the real deal this year, the Dragons. And, not to be a feel-good, I told you so, but we've been talking about the Dragons, even pre-season, being a mover. And everything that we've seen on the field so far suggests they're going to be a team that's going to be there at the end of the year. They've got a very nice balance, talented forwards. Ben Hunt adds that extra factor of organisation in the back line. Guys like Nene McDonald coming of age is really helping. And they've got a guy called Matt Duffy at the back who's just grease lightning and just adds that extra dimension of attack. So honestly, I think the Dragons are going to be very difficult to beat. Predictions for the rest of the round, Chip. Now, this afternoon, we've got with the West Tigers taking on the Storm. As we said before, a rematch from only a couple of weeks ago, which seems a bit ridiculous, but nonetheless, should be a great game, doubleheader in Auckland. How do you see this one going?
I'd like to say the Tigers, and the reason is because I think another loss for Melbourne to the Tigers in such short order, as you mentioned, it might hasten the elevator for Bellamy, which I'd like to see. Being that they are in New Zealand, I don't know how that's going to play out.
Yeah, one of those ones that you kind of... My instinct tells me that the Tigers can knock them off again. But how often do the Melbourne Storm lose twice in a row, let alone to the same team? And look, the Storm are raging hot favourites, but I'm still going to go the Tigers.
Yeah, me too. I like it. I think
should be a great game.
It could be a good game. Yeah, that's right. And taking away that home field advantage, I think it's going to actually improve the game.
Hopefully so. The other little strange variable in this is the health of Cameron Smith. Now, as we know, Smith never gets injured. He's one of these guys that have miraculously, has the body of an accountant, and yet in one of the toughest games of all, somehow manages to avoid injury. But this year, he is 35 years of age now. He's been carrying a bit of a quad strain, and interestingly, he hasn't been doing a lot of kicking. He's not kicking for goal at the moment. That's, I think, just pulling Melbourne back a tad. They're trying to play this down as though it's not a big deal. But if Cameron Smith's not kicking goals, that sort of suggests to me that it's not might be more than a slight strain.
Well, sure. How much is it worth to have him kicking compared to aggravating an injury? Is a good point. He is getting older, so maybe not healing quite as quickly. The other thing about that, I think, is that if you do have a quad strain or there's any kind of leg issue, that's going to slow you down at a dummy half. Definitely, you're not going to be getting ahead as you usually would. So, be interesting to see.
It's probably testament to just how good Cameron Smith is that he can be sort of on one leg and still be playing pretty bloody well.
Well, we've spoken about that in previous podcasts, and I think he's gone with my option, which is just to injure him a little bit increasingly over time, rather than
he's handicapping himself.
A full head of metal headgear, which was your suggestion, which I quite like the idea.
I think so, just to weigh him down just a little bit, like you do with horses.
Peg him back.
Yeah.
Some.
Just put a handicap on. Anyway, so we think the Tigers will get that one in a tight one. The second leg of that doubleheader is the Warriors, the unbeaten New Zealand Warriors, taking on the Cowboys, who have been struggling a bit. Cowboys are going to be pretty desperate for this win, given they're a premiership favourite and they've only won one game. How do you see this one going?
It depends on whether I do send a call out to JT, because he needs a rev up.
Okay, you're on a call basis.
Well, I have his number.
Okay.
He doesn't have mine.
Does he know you have his number?
He knows. He actually paid me quite a bit to take that number for consultation, but I don't let him call me. And I've been busy over the last couple of weeks. I've got a few missed calls. He's looking for a rev up. So I'll tell you what, if I get round to it, I think...
give him a rev up?
I think they might win. If I don't...
What would you say to him to motivate him?
Mate, pull your fucking finger out.
Okay, so just abuse him.
What are you doing?
Okay, that's one way to do it.
You're supposed to be... You thought you were going to be some kind of big shot, right? Well, that was last year, mate.
Yeah, that's the last 15 years.
No,
what have you done for me lately?
What have you done lately, mate? You're only as good as your last, 5 minutes. Forget your 15 years.
Or in line with your motivation tactics, only as good as your last kid, because you used to abduct people's children, didn't you, to get the best performance?
Never proven, mate.
Yeah, well, but off the record, you were telling me before. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I hope I didn't put you in that.
No, it's nothing provable. Okay. I'm not going to incriminate myself.
On the other side of the coin chip, we have the Warriors, who last week gave the Roosters a toweling. I know that because I was there, paid $45 for a ticket to watch Boyd Cordner make no yardage. So it was quite painful.
It's almost $1 a point.
Yeah, thanks. That frames it in an even more depressing light.
What was it, 36-6?
Oh, I lost count.
So that's 42 points, 45
I just started eating 4 and 20 pies.
That's your $3 for the GST.
I didn't care anymore. I was just crying into my pies. But they played very well, and the Roosters didn't. So, but the Warriors have shown every round so far that they are a team that's different from last year. They're at home. They're up against a team that's been down on form. I know the Cowboys are going to be hungry for this, but I still think the Warriors will get them.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I was going to tip the Cowboys.
Okay.
In a bit of an upset.
It's good to have some differences.
Yeah, I think...
only a marginal upset. I think they've got them close to $1.80 a piece.
Well, I think I'm going to make that call.
Okay. Make it.
And watch out for JT in this game.
Next game on the card, we've got the Knights taking on the Broncos. This is up at Newcastle at McDonald Jones Stadium. Whenever these two teams meet post Wayne Bennett leaving the Knights, the common narrative here is for the Knights to just abuse Wayne Bennett because he took half the players with him when he left. But I mean, this year seems a little bit different. The Knights obviously have most of the Roosters squad. They're a very different team, and the Broncos are struggling. For me, it's the Knights. How do you see this one?
I think the Roosters can do it. I think Mitchell Pearce by a field goal, potentially. He's getting, a few weeks now since he's kicked a field goal. I think it's time. Yeah,
that's right. I think he did one in round one, and he hasn't managed to plonk one since. But, yeah, okay. So you think it'll be a close one?
Well, I think it might be. I think the Knights have improved so much since last year, and, considering I think they were favourite for Wooden Spoon this year. They were close.
Look, they firmed out a bit because they've won the last 3 Wooden Spoons, but I think with the recruitment they might have been 1 or 2 rungs up from that. So but they were pretty, they weren't tipped to go in.
Well, I think they've surpassed that expectation at least. I think they'll be motivated. If it was in Brisbane, maybe I would be leaning to the Broncos, but I'm going to tip the Knights for this one.
Where do you see the Broncos at the moment? I mean, they're a team that...
middle table.
But the Broncos this year, I think, have lost a lot of key cattle. They've got a few injuries. There's a bit of disharmony going on as well, with Kevin Walters has just left the club.
Yeah.
It just seemed to be a club not quite focused on their game at the moment. Am I going too far there? Or?
Well, I think the only place you went too far was with cattle.
Okay, I shouldn't have called them cattle.
There's no other team other than the Broncos that you would have said they've lost a bit of cattle.
That's true.
Further to that, I think you're right. I think they have lost too much in the core.
Ben Hunt.
Yeah, and the other thing is I don't necessarily see them as a shoo-in for the 8. I think they could end up mid-table, maybe mid-ish table.
Yeah, they could miss. I just get the feeling with the Broncos as well that the half situation isn't working for them. They've got Milford on one side and Nikorima on the other, and they're just too similar, I think, for me. And I'm not the first to say that, but it's definitely, I think, something that's stunting their attack. They don't have anyone genuinely constructing before the line. They've just got 2 guys that play off the top of their head, and they're a little bit predictable.
Yeah, well, I think if you've got that right-left dynamic and your 2 playmakers on either side, most of the time, you can just lack that bit of spark, especially if you're looking for creativity, because what you want to do is actually have some combinations of creativity. That's where you're going to really break the line. So maybe Milford...
they don't seem to combine very
really
much.
Combining that well. Maybe that's something that they can work on, because they are a bit one-dimensional. And these days, you've really got to have another couple of angles to choose from when you're trying to score those tries.
Yeah, they're not very threatening with the ball at the moment. And I also think Nikorima is a turnstile in defence, so that's probably not helping either. So for me, I think the Knights will get it. You think the Knights will get it as well?
I'm going to tip the Knights over the Broncos,
The next game, this is an interesting one. This is the Titans at home to the Eagles. We should say at home, but it's the Commonwealth Games up there, so they're not playing at their home, inverted commas. They're at Marley Brown Oval. I don't know
hang on.
Where the fuck that is.
The Titans have actually
They've vacated.
Lost the home ground advantage for the Commonwealth Games.
Yep.
Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, that's apparently the story.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if they're happy about it, but they're playing in some dust bowl.
I'm sure they're thrilled.
I think it's in Gladstone.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, but back to the game. We've got the Eagles. Now, the problem with the Eagles, Chip, is a couple of weeks ago they had their salary cap punishment handed down to them, which is going to drastically affect their depth. It means that they can't purchase any other players this year. They were hoping to, and I think they're still looking to appeal that decision. But in the meantime, they've got very little depth, and they've also copped a few injuries. So I know Tom Trbojevic is out for this game. A couple of other forwards have struggled. So I think Sirinen could be out for the year. Darcy Lussick apparently has left the club, heading off to the Toronto Wolfpacks. So there's a diminishing squad there. I think the Titans will get them.
Well, look, this is a weird one because, in rugby league, if you get caught cheating and you're paying the players too much money and you're doing some dodgy deals, you can still play. Whereas you do that shit in cricket and you're out.
You're gone.
So,
you think the Eagles should count themselves lucky?
I think we should just kick the Eagles out for a year.
Just ban them.
Just ban them for a year. I mean, how's Steve Smith feeling about all of this? Fuck, mate, you put a little extra ball in you, a little extra air in the ball, and I'm gone for a year, and so are my 2 teammates, and these bastards are actually cheating, getting paid. Where's the tax department? Where's the accountants? What's going on here?
I would love to see you tamper with a cricket ball if you're putting air in it.
Isn't that how it works? Don't they have a little...
You're just putting air in it, just puncturing a little hole in the middle and pumping it up for some reason.
Is that how it swings?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But it's okay, mate. I think your plan is just as sound as theirs. So
I think we'll have people in stitches over this, honestly. Really.
Where do you see this game? Do you think the Titans have got the Eagles' measure? I mean, the Eagles are funny. They've been at home at Brookie. They've been unbeatable. Away from home, poor.
Yeah, well, they've lost, as you said, they've lost a lot of players. And Trbojevic, both the Trbojevics, actually. That's a nice one, isn't it? Trbojevics?
I think it's Trbojevic.
Trbojevic.
Yeah.
But plural.
Oh, yeah, the Trbojevici.
The Trbojevici. I think we've got a new brand.
They're great players.
I think they could win, honestly. I mean, they're up against a lot. A lot of the time, teams that are really under the weather and copping some abuse and some stick will put together a game or two. I think it could be tight. I'll be interested to see if all of the Titans make it to this far-flung field in time. Could be starting a bit of traffic coming out of the Gold Coast. Yeah, it's going to be tough. So, look, I'm going to go a tight game, but I'll go the Eagles for this one.
Look, I'm going to go the Titans. It's interesting to go to the Eagles. I said it could well be a close game. As you said, it'd be hopefully all of the Titans players turn up. Some of them might be watching the table tennis, but if they do, and Ash Taylor plays, I say the Titans will win that game. And the final game is at 4:30 tomorrow, and that is the Eels taking on the Panthers. Another game that we've saw last week, pretty much.
Panthers
all the
way.
way.
Gonna win.
So you, just to refresh the listeners here, Chip, you're refusing to tip the Eels so long as Jared Hayne is employed there. Is that right?
Oh, look, pretty much if he's in the country. Okay. I'd like to actually see him. And, New Caledonia, let's not fuck around. Let's get him to the Northern Hemisphere, at least.
Forcibly, or would he have to leave of his own accord?
Oh, look, I think we could set something up to make him want to go. I mean, you're not going to make him do anything he doesn't want to do.
More after this. Welcome back to the Voluntary Tackle. Now, Chip, we were talking about this earlier, the ball tampering crisis in cricket. Now, as an NRL fan, I felt a bit jealous that the cricket was taking up all of the headlines during the Steve Smith, David Warner, Bancroft scandal. And it got me to thinking, should the NRL try to cash in on the ball tampering crisis by having our own version? Should they allow players to tamper with the Steeden to get ourselves on the front page? Because maybe we need, I know we have plenty of scandals, but we've never had a scandal involving the ball. And I'm just wondering if there's something we can do there.
Well, I do think that, the back page of the Telegraph having anything other than rugby league on it is a waste of paper. So we really should do something. I'd like to ask our loyal listeners how they feel we could tamper with the ball. I mean, you've got it.
Yeah, we can get some suggestions.
I think we're going to have to get some technology involved, because the one thing is that when you've got possession of the ball, you don't want to have the ball doing anything strange or weird or untoward, because you're more likely to pull a Matt Moylan.
Yeah, well, you don't want the ball to become violent.
Unless the other team has it. And this is what I was thinking. Maybe we could employ some technology to make the ball impossible to use and then turn a switch and have it go back to normal, because we need that variance.
Or so maybe what do you mean by impossible to use? It just becomes like a dead weight.
Or maybe what we could do is get a leather covered lead ball and just rotate between that and a normal ball for whether you've got possession or not, because that's going to be tough to kick a field goal.
Well, I mean, if it's a giant lead ball, presumably no one would be able to lift it. Would that be a problem, wouldn't it? Would it just be a bunch of players trying to lift a ball together?
Oh, I think it'd just be a lot of play the ball penalties, because you really can't move it with your foot.
No,
you're not going to be moving it anywhere. And I know Jared's been upset with trying to play the normal football, but I think we could make it more challenging, perhaps.
What if periodically the ball became electrified?
Yeah, great.
So just not the whole game, obviously, because that would be dangerous and irresponsible. But what if it was just electrified? I don't know, for 30 seconds, a couple of times a half.
Yeah, great. At random moments.
Yeah,
or
maybe
what you could do is actually give the coaches each a shock.
That's a great idea.
Depending on who, and it could be their own player if they're not playing well. Could be true. Whatever, and you shock them, and if they drop the ball, well, you're going to punish them. But maybe just one each. Yep. I think that would be really nice.
Like a power play, like a literal power play.
Exactly, right. We've been fans of electrocuting players. Loyal listeners will know we'd recommended cattle prods for quicker play the balls.
Absolutely.
The
NRL are so close-minded, aren't they? They never take us up on those.
I've written to them so many times. The only issue there would be in the wet. Are you going to let them do that and just electrify everyone for a go?
You could kill everyone, couldn't you?
Yeah. Or at least maybe non-lethal, but a little bit of writhing, or maybe some fitting would be fitting.
Well, I think it would be down to your voltage. So, I mean, if you had something sort of the level of a power socket, something in the range of 200 to 300 volts, I think you're probably dealing with something quite dangerous.
Lethal.
Yeah, so maybe only reserve that for your Mitchell Pearces, and for everyone else, just make it a mild
50, just
50,
an even 50.
Exactly.
Give them 50.
Give them a fright.
Give them 50.
You might stop a heart every now and again, but they'll get the message.
Just listen to the voluntary tackle. We've got all the bloody problem solved here.
Now, just some advice for some of the teams on how they might tamper with the ball. So, for example, I've got the Knights. The Knights could potentially lace the ball with some kind of nerve agent that only affects Mitchell Pearce. Yeah,
see, the thing is there, I don't know how we'd blame the Russians for that.
I think you could definitely blame Putin.
Okay, well, let's go with that.
As long as you could blame Putin,
everyone's happy.
It would be kosher.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Souths, maybe they could, tamper with the ball by putting some Selly's All Clear on it, so that it became really sticky, and that way George Burgess could finally catch it.
Yeah, but how would he get let go of it. That's the thing, you know. It'd be stuck to his shoulder. It'd be stuck on his forehead. It'd be stuck everywhere. Like everyone would be passing the ball at him like those. What were they called? The
Those
grip,
sticky hands.
the grip things.
Oh,
he
like
used
the
to-
grip
with
ball.
the tennis ball. Was it grip ball?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you think it would go sour as an idea because George Burgess would always have the ball?
Well, I tell you, it would be nice to pass from dummy half to George Burgess just running. And you know that you just hit him with the ball, it's going to stick, and he can just go for it.
Just
and
sticks to his nipples.
Bash into everyone.
And then there'd probably be more players, like defenders, that would stick to him. And he'd just be like a giant mesh of players.
Yeah.
It would probably fuck up the game, but it'd be funny to watch.
It'd be great. I think it could improve ratings with South's fans.
What about the Storm? I think the Storm, just on a side, should make the ball maybe 3 times bigger so that the ball finally looks like it's the right scale for Sam Cassiano.
Well, could
He's
be.
a big man.
He's a big boy. I think maybe the Manly Warringah team can learn from Melbourne's example and fill the ball full of cash. And then basically, you know, if you play well, you get the game ball.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Chip, because I thought that was the same thing for the Roosters. Now, I thought the Roosters could actually put extra pockets inside the ball so that every time the ball was kicked, cash would literally fly out of it. Every kick downtown would effectively become a lucrative third-party deal.
Yeah, I get what you mean, but the Roosters have actually worked out a way to intertwine the jersey with gold. And that way, you know, the player goes through, it's very discreet.
Is that how they land all those big signatures? They just give them gold leaf.
It's a nice jersey.
Lined jerseys.
It's a nice jersey, and they can't take it away from you.
It's
And,
genius.
you know, it's not like cash. See, Manly and Melbourne, they don't understand, you know, like there's other forms of money. You don't just, cash is traceable, you know, if they find that on you, you're in trouble. It's just my jersey, Your Honour.
That's why Nick Politis is always ahead of the game. The Broncos, Chip, I was thinking maybe a ball that could just play some happy tunes every now and again just to cheer Wayne Bennett up, because let's face it, he's a very grumpy man right
That'd
now.
have to be some kind of tune.
Stacey's Mum by Fountains of Wayne, I was thinking.
Stacey's Mum, yeah, I'm in love with Stacey's mum.
Or what about Vanessa Amorosi's Absolutely Everybody?
Yeah.
You have to jive to that.
I can't see Wayne Bennett dancing to that somehow. I think you'd
Can
need...
you see him dancing at all?
Look, I can see him enjoying some George Jones on a balcony with a rocking chair and a whiskey.
Just whittling a large penis out of balsa wood.
Yeah, whatever works for you. If you feel like catching up with Wayne Bennett and his personally etched dildo with your name on it, then you go right ahead. Personally, I'll take the George Jones and the whiskey, thanks.
And my final suggestion, Chip, is I thought for the Gold Coast Titans, the ball could simply be tampered to be a drug dispensary. So depending on what you do with it, it would determine what kind of drug would come out. So, for instance, a tort bomb would literally shower the field in coke, for example. A long cutout ball.
Really make it snow.
Exactly, make it snow. They could do those like cocaine angels in the field,
beautiful.
which would be a nice touch. They could also have like a long cutout pass, drop little baggies of smack.
Okay.
So if you did that, and well, I guess the less said about the banana kick, the better. But you know what I'm saying. I think it could be your one-stop shop for drug use.
Well, maybe what we could do is actually in the Steeden, the actual name Steeden on the ball, each of those different letters could be lined with a different drug that would permeate the skin. So if you wanted to rub a little S, you could have a little speed, and if you wanted to have a little T, you could have a little, THC, and if you wanted to take it from there, you've got a couple of E's to choose from.
Yep. What if you licked the whole thing? Would you die? Welcome back to the Voluntary Tackle. Now, look, we've managed to secure some exclusive interviews over the years, Chip, and thankfully Wayne Bennett has obliged once again by allowing us to interview him, this time about whether or not he's become too grumpy for the game. I was lucky enough to catch up with Wayne yesterday. Wayne Bennett, thanks for joining us today on the Voluntary Tackle.
Yeah, mate, don't thank me. I hate you fucking guts.
Okay. Wayne, the rugby league community feels you've become really grumpy over the last couple of years. Do you feel there's any credence in that?
Mate.
Sorry, Rain, I didn't catch that.
You fucking cheese dick, mate.
Okay. Kevin Walters resigning, was that a mutual decision?
Oh, in a sense, yeah.
How so?
Both agreed he should get fucked.
People say Kevy would have stayed, though, Wayne, if you just were a bit nicer to him.
Oh, I'd have been nicer to him if he was less of a...
Well, what do you think of Kevin aside, Wayne? Don't you think you're going to miss his coaching skills at the Broncos?
No, I've already replaced him.
With who?
Giant sack of raw cow shit. Now sits in the dressing sheds and does all the jobs Kevin used to do, so...
I bet a sack of poo can't replace everything Kevin did.
Oh, look, you're right. It doesn't stink as much, but...
I get the sense you weren't a big fan of Kevin Walters,
Mate, that's just your opinion, mate. You'll never divide me from myself.
Okay, Wayne. Thanks for joining us. You're listening to the Voluntary Tackle. Now, Russell Crowe, big South fan.
Prick.
As we know. Well, we've got our own opinions.
What do you think?
Massive prick.
Okay. We do have different opinions.
Yeah, we're very different. We definitely differ on the scale of his prickedness. But interesting story in the news, Chip. Russell Crowe's holding a big garage sale at the moment. He's selling off a lot of his stuff. Apparently he's a collector. And so a lot of his film memorabilia and guitars and... God, I'm glad he's selling all those guitars from 40-odd Foot of Grunts.
Doing the world a favour there.
Absolutely.
But if he's a collector, wouldn't you be buying stuff?
Well, I think he's collected too much stuff.
Okay.
So he has no room for it.
Right.
So he's freeing up room to buy more stuff.
So he's actually run out of acreage on the farm.
Yep.
Okay.
It's just piled up high with
You
his
heard
shit.
about that farm he's got, that party farm?
Yeah. The one where he abused Luke Keary.
Yeah, and a lot of people get invited.
Yeah,
and they have a good time.
Yep.
Where's their fucking invite, Russ?
Very puzzling. But I guess the thing that made me think about this story, Chip, was that he'd probably have a lot of old South memorabilia that he'd be selling off, wouldn't he? You'd imagine.
There's a lot of premiership rings that he got made up before the season each year to try and motivate the players, and they're tough to sell. You've virtually got to melt them down to get that, low rent zinc.
Well, what other South memorabilia should he sell? I mean, he's going to have a lot of stuff in that garage of his. We already know he sold a second-hand Luke Keary a few years ago. That didn't work out well for him. Thanks, Russ. But there's probably other stuff that Russell Crowe has just lying around his acreage, as you said.
Well, there's a broken phone.
That's true.
There's an old
Did he
broken
keep that phone? Did he?
I believe it was actually kept by law enforcement and then returned once it was...
I thought it was pretty well embedded inside that concierge's head.
Yeah, well, I think it took him a few goes to get it in there, and it took him a few more to get it out again. But they did recover part of the phone.
Part of the phone, with bone fragments in it, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just one of the many incidents that he's had in his life, isn't he? Yeah.
Really, it's a bit of a trophy for him.
Exactly.
But that'd probably fetch a couple of bucks.
What about the skull, the dented skull of the man he hit? Would that be...
I don't think he wants to sell that.
No. Well, I don't think it's his to sell either, to be honest.
Well, no, it's the guy that owned it, but he's not using it.
Could he potentially look to sell one of Greg Inglis's old knees? Well, I mean, how much would that go for these days?
We could do a trade-up, maybe.
Okay. Yeah,
get him a service in the dealership somehow.
Like when you trade in like your old Hyundai Getz.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hope you get something off your new one, like $1,000 off.
Let's get Inglis a new knee.
That'd be good. You could probably pick up, if you were going to buy stuff from Russell Crowe's place, you could probably pick up Adam Reynolds' career for a bargain. There's not a lot of time left on the clock, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's struggling. Maybe we could give him a bit of money and swap him out a knee.
Do a bit of a trade between the two.
How are his knees?
Not good.
They're not good.
No, they're probably worse than Greg's.
Okay.
To be honest.
What do you do with an old football player with bad knees?
You probably put him out to pasture. A couple of pellets in the old shoddy.
Yeah.
And
just for good measure, give him a couple of pellets.
Oh well, I thought I'd just take two out and just one each in the head. But
maybe what you could do is actually just scattergun both their legs.
Yep.
Right. Just for a bit of pain first.
Well, why are you punishing them? It's not their fault they have knee injuries.
Well, I suppose you make.
Is that just for your own demonic pleasure? You're getting very Ivan Milat on me now. I feel like we're not quite on the same page, but it strikes me, Chip, that Russell might also look to get rid of George Burgess's hands, just in case anyone wanted to grease some baking trays. Do you think they might sell for a good yard?
Oh, look, how much would you pay for a finger? And what would you do with it?
Finger. Honestly, I can't think of too many practical uses.
Maybe you could have the hand inserted on the end of a long pole and have a lever that would activate the opposing thumb so that you could clean your gutters out with.
But it would keep dropping shit out of the gutters. That's the thing.
That's all right.
That'd be frustrating.
You don't mind him dropping it, just as long as he grabs it and then drops it.
And drops it somewhere nice.
Be useful.
Yeah, I just don't know if you'd ever trust George Burgess's hands near any kind of household chore, to be honest. He'd just fuck it all up. Potentially it could be just a form of lubricant. You know, if you're, say you're, I don't know, trying to give an elephant a rectal exam, you might just get, as you said, George Burgess's hands on the end of a big pole
Stick it up there,
and it would probably slip in and out pretty easily.
Well, you'd have to hand it to him. I think he's, really, we've got to find some use for his useless fucking things on the end of his arms, and they're really no good for football. So I don't know. What do you pick your nose with it? I'm not sure.
It's a tough one. If there are any ideas, please write into us at the Voluntary Tackle on Twitter. We'll be back after this break. Till next time.
We'll be back.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back
break
with you.
We will be back
after these commercial messages.
Just after this break
that had just happened.
Give him a hand.
Chip, our question last time was asking the listeners who would win in a game of Twister between Paul Gallen and Josh Dugan. Now, we did have a few answers to this one, this puzzling, vexing problem, Chip. And the first one comes from Jared's Mario account, who said Paul Gallen would win because he would start to fall, and to balance himself, he'd grab Doogs with a squirrel grip. A certain part of Dugan would fall off, and he'd go down in agony. Well, it's certainly graphic, that answer, isn't it?
I think it's also realistic. I mean, I can see that Jared here has done his research, particularly with regards to Paul Gallen trying to right himself. He's tried everything, and nothing really works, but he makes a hell of a lot of damage when he goes down. So I think Dugan may well hit the turf. Writhing in agony sounds about right. And, I think we should get this game on and see how it comes down.
Interestingly here, though, Chip, I have to say, and I am a stickler for these kind of answers. Now, as inventive and creative as Jared's answer is here, it sort of doesn't go into who would win the game, does it? It more talks about Josh Dugan losing his dick.
Well, I think he goes on to say Dugan would fall off. And isn't the thing if you hit the ground first?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, so he's saying, you're right, he's saying Josh Dugan would lose. He's just not explicitly saying that. He's
saying he would lose first. I mean, they're both losers. We know that.
Oh, we know that much.
We started the segment, but he's saying that Dugan had hit the deck first. I think we'll give a tick to Jared there.
Interestingly, Chip, we also have another answer saying that Paul Gallen would win, and that comes from Turtle Wilson, who said, "Tree Gallen wins by a peptide. Dugan loses by a cruiser," which I like an answer that has a bit of sort of poetic rhythm.
Well, definitely, we're always happy to hear from the Turtle whenever he shows up. It's always good to say g'day again. Tree Gallen, I mean, how many gallons can you fit in a tree?
That's just one of those riddles you'll never solve.
A hell of a lot of cruisers to make up a gallon, that's for sure.
I've got to say, the imagery of Paul Gallen and Josh Dugan playing Twister while Josh Dugan's inebriated on candy water, and Paul Gallen is just essentially an immovable object,
pepped up,
possibly getting wood. It's horrifying.
Well, it could branch out anywhere from there, and I think really you got to leaves it to the imagination of someone like Turtle Wilson to come up with something so deeply rooted.
Mate, you're unstoppable. Welcome back to the Voluntary Tackle. Now, Chip, it's very sad watching last night's game because one of the great players of the game, one Greg Inglis, a.k.a. GI, was stood up badly last night, Chip, by Ewan Aiken. Now, Ewan Aiken's a very good player, but he beat Greg Inglis with such ease. It was very worrying to see. My question to the show is this. Should Greg Inglis be able to use one of those old person buggies?
Yeah, like motorised transport.
No, I'd never want to see him retire. So no matter what happens to his body from here on in, he's such a legend.
Play.
Exactly.
Yeah. Can we get him a transplant? Are there any knee donors?
I don't know. I've heard of a lot of organ donors, but I've never heard of anyone donating their knee. But I'm sure it can happen. What if they just took it? Why don't they take a knee of someone who doesn't deserve it?
Okay.
Like Tom Simons.
Okay, well, let's make a call.
Chip, what else can we do for Greg Inglis apart from giving him a motorised scooter? He's a legend of the game. We want to keep him in the game and his leg's fucked. Outside of getting someone to forcibly donate their knee to him, are there any other kind of, I guess, special rules that we could implement for GI?
Well, look, you've got to help someone in need. Really?
Well, that's obviously a possibility, Chip. I was thinking, in holiday time in the summer in Australia, people love those slip and slides.
Yep.
I thought maybe if he's playing at centre, there's just one of those giant slip and slides that only Greg Inglis can use.
Just in that corridor.
Yeah, so you put some washing detergent on it, make it super slippery, and he can just literally lie on it and just sort of glide down the field. He wouldn't have to use his knee then.
Well, I think what you'd have to do then is give him a couple of different options, a couple of different lines to slide on.
Oh, that's true. Because just the one channel would be boring.
Yeah, and it's a bit telegraphed.
Yep.
Maybe you could have one or two channels with like a little Z in it for a step around the fullback or something like that.
And he can choose to go straight or take the detour.
Yeah, maybe you've got like a, what do you call them, like a water slide vibe where you can just, do a couple of angles. And
so it becomes a bit like Wipeout. You remember that show, Wipeout?
Yeah, look, I'd be prepared to bend the rules quite a bit for Greg.
Yeah,
because
one of the legends of the game.
He's obviously someone who's come from humble beginnings and come a long way, and really kept a lot of that humility, at least as far as I can tell, and is a very down to earth guy. So I'd like to see him continue to play. It's a shame, that his knee is going, but there's a lot of people who are fended off over the years that are thinking, well, I can finally get my revenge.
Yeah, maybe I'm wondering if that's going to be a thing with the rugby league community. If all those people that Greg Inglis made to look stupid over the years. All of those
people he offended over the years.
Exactly. They might get their revenge on him. This could be the year of just Greg Inglis getting his comeuppance for being so good. To have players like Dale Copley, for example, who was made to look a fool by lots of players, but definitely by GI. He'd finally go, I can run around you, Greg. Because you can't move.
What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and maybe that's a nice way to balance out his career. Well, that about wraps it up here at the Voluntary Tackle for another week. We should say another week, but God knows when we're going to be back, Chip.
Well, putting aside, hospital and prison, I think we should be able to round it out again in another week or maybe less.
It's probably going to be a bit more because I'm going overseas for a couple of weeks. So.
Oh, really? You've got to get out of town for a bit?
Yeah, so unless we do one live from
sorted
Vietnam.
That out.
Yeah, we'll work it out. Somehow, I'll Skype in.
How are you going to pay it?
Maybe you can just host the show without me.
Yeah, you see, I just don't get paid enough for that, mate.
You can host it with Xander Risotto.
Yeah, I've had a Xander.
But until next time, just do what Darren Lehman would do and pretend to know nothing about your own cunning plan of evil. See you next time. What do you think Todd Byrne's doing now?
He's probably burning that candle at both ends at the moment, I would think. Up late, studying, trying to find a new career.
Oh, metaphorically, I thought you meant he literally was putting a candle up his arse.
Yeah, see, I'm always surprised how quick you go there into insertables.
How quick I go to the wick.
That's right.
The worst part about Todd is he puts the flame end up the arse. It should go the other way.
Well, I think if you've been drinking enough alcohol, you can actually breathe fire from the other end.
Can you? Yeah, as I said before, you bump around in odd circles.